the Inquisition's most sadistic torture devices ever used behind these walls. Screams once echoed through corridors of stone. Welcome to the darkest chapter in religious history, where faith became a weapon and salvation came through suffering. The Spanish Inquisition. For over 350 years, it ruled through terror, wielding instruments of pain designed not just to punish, but to extract confessions from the souls of the accused. Established in 1478 by the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella, the Inquisition claimed to purify the faith. But behind closed doors, it perfected the art of human suffering. What many people don't realize is that the Inquisition didn't just randomly torture people. They had detailed manuals, specific procedures, and unfortunately, highly sophisticated equipment. Let us begin with perhaps the most infamous of all the rack. Simple in design, devastating in effect. The victim would be tied by their wrists and ankles to opposite ends of this wooden frame. Slowly, methodically, the ropes would be tightened, stretching the body beyond its natural limits. The rack was designed for psychological torture as much as physical. Victims could hear their own joints separating, feel their muscles tearing, all while knowing it could stop at any moment. If only they confessed. Next, we encounter the strappado, a device that turned gravity itself into an instrument of agony. The strappado was particularly cruel because it required minimal equipment. Just ropes, pulleys, and human cruelty. The victim's hands would be bound behind their back. Then they'd be hoisted into the air by their wrists. The shoulder joints would dislocate almost immediately. But the true horror came with the drops. Without warning, the victim would be dropped several feet, then jerked to a sudden stop. The shock would send waves of agony through every nerve, often tearing muscles and shattering bones. The Iron Maiden, a metal coffin lined with spikes, designed to pierce the victim without hitting vital organs. Whether real or mythical, during the actual Inquisition, it represents the reputation for creative cruelty. What we must understand is that the Church today completely rejects these methods. These were dark times when fear overruled compassion, when faith became corrupted by power. But perhaps no device was more psychologically devastating than the water torture, also known as the toca. The victim would be strapped to an inclined board, head lower than feet. A cloth would be placed over their face, and water would be poured slowly, continuously. The toca created the sensation of drowning without actually drowning. It was psychological warfare. The victim's own survival instincts became their tormentor. Drop by drop, the water would soak through the cloth, entering the nose and mouth. The victim would experience the terror of drowning while being fully conscious and aware. This was the twisted logic of the Inquisition, that torture was an act of mercy, a way to save souls from hell by extracting confessions on earth. The Judas cradle, named after the ultimate betrayer, was a pyramid-shaped seat designed to cause maximum discomfort and eventual injury. Victims would be lowered onto the pointed apex, their full body weight pressing down on the most sensitive areas. Hours would pass, sometimes days, as gravity did its cruel work. What's important to understand is that these devices weren't just about inflicting pain. They were about breaking the human spirit, about making people so desperate they would confess to anything. These torture methods produced false confessions at an alarming rate. Thousands of innocent people confessed to crimes they didn't commit. The pair of anguish, a metal instrument that would expand inside body cavities, causing internal damage and excruciating pain. These devices show us how systematically cruel humans can become when they believe their cause justifies any means. The breaking wheel transformed a simple card wheel into an instrument of slow execution. Victims would be tied to the wheel, and their bones would be broken one by one with iron bars. Death could take hours, sometimes days. The wheel would then be mounted on a pole, displaying the broken body as a warning to others. From a medical perspective, these devices were designed with a terrifying understanding of human anatomy. They knew exactly how to cause maximum pain without causing immediate death. The Spanish boot metal cases that would be fitted around the leg, then slowly tightened with screws until bones crushed and muscles pulped. Each turn of the screw brought new agony. Victims would watch helplessly as their own limbs were systematically destroyed. This was the Inquisition's ultimate success, not just extracting confessions, but destroying the very concept of truth itself. Survivors reported that by the time they confessed, they had forgotten what truth even meant. The Spanish Inquisition officially ended in 1834, but its legacy lingers. Entire communities were destroyed, families torn apart, and countless innocent lives lost. The Church has formally apologized for the Inquisition. We must acknowledge this dark chapter while ensuring it never repeats. Faith should inspire love, not fear. These instruments of torture stand today as monuments to humanity's capacity for evil. They remind us that when ideology becomes more important than humanity, when faith turns to fanaticism, even the most sacred institutions can become sources of unimaginable horror. The Inquisition's torture devices were not just tools of pain, they were weapons against truth itself, designed to break not just bodies, but the human spirit. Their legacy serves as an eternal warning about the dangers of absolute power corrupted by absolute certainty. In memory of the thousands who suffered and died during the Spanish Inquisition from 1478 to 1834, may their pain never be forgotten and never be repeated. Women bore the greatest burden, often treated as political commodities rather than human beings with their own desires and ambitions. But men also suffered under these systems. Elite males found their marriage choices constrained by political necessity, while common men faced laws that made marriage economically impossible without imperial approval. The psychological trauma of these systems rippled through generations, creating cultures where intimate relationships were always secondary to political considerations. As we survey the ruins of these ancient empires, their monuments to power crumbling into dust, we might think their systems of sexual control died with them. But the legacy lives on. Modern nations still use marriage law to define citizenship, control immigration, and manage social relationships. The tools may have evolved, but the fundamental insight remains. Controlling sexuality means controlling society. The ancient empires discovered that the most effective chains aren't made of iron. They're made of desire itself. When you control who people can love, you control who they are. Perhaps most chilling is how willing people were to accept these systems. The promise of social status, economic security, and imperial protection made sexual submission seem like a reasonable trade. The ancient empires taught us that freedom isn't just about political rights or economic opportunity. It's about the fundamental human right to choose your own intimate relationships without state interference. In the end, the greatest victory of ancient sexual control wasn't military conquest or territorial expansion. It was convincing people that their most intimate choices should serve someone else's ambitions. The empires are gone, but their lesson remains. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, not just against armies and laws, but against any system that claims the right to control human hearts.